I'll have you guys start out here for our second hour quick with the information I gave you here. Invoice data June 27th, terms of 110 net 60. Fill in the 3 dates on our timeline. So, this of course is June 27th here, 6/27. What date's going to go in here?
No.
July. What? How many days are going to go past between the invoice date and the end of the discount period? 10 days. So if you look on the chart, June 27th is day 178. So this is going to be day 188, which is July 7th. So 7/7. And of course, this is the credit period, which is how many days? 60. So 178 plus 60 is 238. So we find day 238, which is August 26th. So they must pay by the 26th of August.
Yeah, 60 days due, so.
Yeah, pretty much. So let's look at another example. So we have an invoice date of December 19th. An invoiced amount of $4,200. Terms. $2,500 net 30. And the question is, how much needs to be paid if paid on December 23rd. Now, we may or may not be able to determine without doing the timeline whether this is in the discount period. Is this within the discount period? So we've got December 19th. This would be the 24th, 5 days. And this would be January 18th of the following year. Is that within the discount period? Yes, it is firmly within the discount. Well, a day within the discount period, barely within the discount period. But they do get the discount. What percent discount do they get? 2%. 2.5, right? Yeah. Now, how much is paid? How much do they need to pay? Well, if they get a 2% discount, what percent are they going to pay? 98%, right? We could find 2% of 4,200 and subtract it, but it would be quicker to do this. 4,200 times 0.98. Just change it into a rate. You bet. It gives us $4,116 is the amount that is paid. Well, it's $84 off. That's not bad. So let's build up to one here. I'm going to add a couple things to this one. So we're going to buy items that have a list price of $8,600. You receive a trade discount of $12,700. Your invoice date is February 26th. One of the things you're going to fill in is the invoice amount, the terms, $210,115 net 30 is what that reads. This is just adding an extra level to the discount period. If paid within the first 10 days, you get a 2% discount. If you miss that, but you're still within the first 15 days, you get a 1% discount, but the net amount is due at 30 days. It is paid on March 9th. Find the amount paid. So first thing we're going to fill in is, what is this invoiced amount? It's not $8,600. What's it going to be? Well, we're going to take the 12.7, and what are we going to do with it? 12% discount means you paid 88%. 7% discount means you paid 93%. So 0.88 times 0.93 gives us a net decimal equivalent of 81.84, so 0.8184. So that 8,600 list price is going to be multiplied by 0.8184 to get an invoiced amount of $7,000 and $7,038.24. So that is the amount that goes on the invoice after the trade discount. Now this time our timeline has 3 stops on it, so 4 dates. The first date is still the invoice date of February 26th. February 26th on our table here is day 57. Notice that the table, by the way, only has 28 days listed in February, so this table is only good for non-leap years. As long as it doesn't include the 29th of February within the period, it still will work. So if it does, then you got to do some extra work. Yeah. So now, 210, that means 10 days from that, that would be day 67, which is, if we look it up, day 67 is March 8th. Do they pay before March 8th? No, so they do not get the 2% discount. 115, well, that 15 still goes back to the 26th. So 57 plus 15 is 72. Day 72 is March 13th. Do they pay before then? Yes, so they do get the 1% discount. Now, while we're at it, net 30, 57 plus 30 would be 87. That would have been March 28th. They pay long before that, so we don't need to worry about that date, but we're filling in just for practice. So now the question is, how much is paid? Nope, that would be us the discount if we did 0.01. If it's a 1% discount, that means they paid 99%, which is 0.99. Where'd the 99 come from?
You subtracted it.
Yeah, 100 minus the 1% discount. So the 70.38.24 times 0.99. 69.67.86. That is the amount paid after all the discounts are applied from the original 86. What do you think? Doable?
Doable.
Okay, well, we said that there were modifiers to our effective invoice date. One of those modifiers is ROG. ROG stands for receipt of goods. Some merchandise takes a long time to ship. You know, large items like furniture or whatever, or sometimes if you're a small supplier, you have to wait till you get a full load to send it out or whatever. If it takes 7 or 8 days to ship it from your location to the retailer, if you have a 10-day cash, discount period, they don't have time to take advantage of the discount unless they cut the check that day and send it out. They're not going to get their discount. So in that case where we expect things to take a while to ship to their destination, we modify the invoice date using an ROG modifier. Let me show you how that goes. So it might look like this. On the invoice, we'll have a date of September 18th. An invoice amount of $3,100. Terms 210 net 30. ROG. And most shipping companies have delivery confirmation. Delivery confirmed on 9/26. So what this means is the beginning of our timeline is not 9/18. That gets crossed off and replaced with the day that the goods were delivered of 9/26. So then 9/26, if you looked up September 26th on the chart, that's 269. So this is going to be 279 is the 10-day. 30-day is going to be 299. 279 is going to be October 6th. And 299 is going to be October 26th. And of course, 210 means this is 2% discount is paid in that time frame. And then, of course, the net amount is due by October 26th. Does that make sense? So ROG is just modifies the invoice date from the date on the invoice to the date that the goods were actually confirmed delivered, confirmed received. Otherwise, you look at this, that would have the 9/18, the discount would have actually ended on the 28th. Well, they just received them on the 26th, so they would have only had 2 days to take advantage of the discount. So, let's have an invoice dated January 30th in the amount of $5,800. Terms 15 net 30. ROG. Confirmed delivery February 7th. Paid on February 11th. Find the amount paid. Try that in your notes quick. So what's going to be the starting date on our timeline? February 7th. Good. End of our discount period. Only 5 days, so February 12th. End of the credit period, not real important, but it's going to be March 9th. 30 days. Do they pay in the 1% discount period? Well, February 11th is before the 12th, so they get the 1% discount. So we're going to take, to get the amount that they have to pay, 5,800 times 0.99. Where did the 0.99 come from? Perfect. 1% discount gives us 57.42, I believe. Is that what you guys got? Cool. There is a second type of modifier. At least a second type that we are going to discuss. EOM stands for end of month. EOM is a little more complicated, but there's a good reason behind it. Many companies do not have, especially smaller companies, do not have full-time accounting departments, or they might have a single bookkeeper. And that person cannot process invoices every day. Especially if you're a small business owner and you're keeping your books yourself, you don't have time to process your invoices every day. So what you're going to do is you're going to batch your invoices. Now you might batch them at the end of every week. You might batch them every 2 weeks. What we're going to assume, EOM assumes that you batch them once a month. Now, for the sake of ease in this class, we're going to make a lot of assumptions. First assumption is that you batch them exactly once a month. In the real world, you may have a slow day and you decide, hey, I'm going to batch my invoices and send them out. It might be every couple of weeks that you get around to it, or it might be 1 month, it might be after 3 weeks, the next month it may take you 5 or 6 weeks before you get time to batch your invoices and send them out. We are making the assumption that you batch your invoices every month, exactly once a month. Okay? Now, the second assumption we're going to make is it is batched on the last day of the month. At the end of the month. In reality, you might, if you do batch them on the same day every month, you might pick a day that's typically slow. Maybe the end of the month is pretty hectic, you got a lot going on, or the beginning of the month might be real busy. So you might choose the 10th of the month to do invoices because that's usually a slow part of the month. Or you might choose the second Monday of every month to be the day that you do invoices because Mondays seem to be slow. So I mean, we're making that assumption that the day you batch the invoices and send them out is always the last day of the month. So what happens is, here's the beginning of the month. Here's the end of the month. Well, it's the 28th, the 30th, or the 31st, depending on the month. All of the invoices for that month get gathered together, and they're going to get processed on that last day and sent out. Notice, my circle here did not come all the way to the end of the month. I stopped short. Why is that? Because in these last couple days of the month, your invoices might not be completely filled out, or you might have shipped it, but it didn't make it from the loading dock into the office. There's always a delay. So that is the third assumption we are making, is that there is a certain delay, and that delay that we are making is 5 days, is what we're assuming. So we are assuming that cutoff date is the 26th of the month. So that any invoice created on or after the 26th does not make it to the front office in time to be batched for that month. Now, in reality, there isn't necessarily a set day. Some months, it may only take a couple days to get them up to the head office. Other months, if it's real busy, it might take 7 or 8 days before they make their way from the loading dock up to the head office. We're making the assumption that every month, because you really, I mean, how are you going to do an assignment if you don't know how many days to go? So we're just going to say that every month, anything on the 26th or after goes into the next month. So this would end up going into the following month. So let me chart this out a little bit better now with that information. Let's do the month of March. So this is March 1st. This is March 31st. Well, somewhere back here is February. Now, February is a little odd because February only has 28 days. But to make it easy on us, we're still going to assume that the cutoff is February 26th. That's why I chose March, was to make sure we included that. That's kind of unrealistic because that's only a 2-day delay, and every other month we have 4 or 5 days, but we're going to keep it consistent. And it's going to go to March 26th. All invoices generated on the February 26th up through March 25th, technically is the last day, are going to get processed on the last day of March, March 31st. So their effective invoice date is going to be March 31st. Does that make sense? So if we have an invoice with a date of 4/19, April 19th, and the terms are 210 EOM. Notice there is no net here. End of month is always assumed to be net 30. Now again, that's one of our assumptions. We're assuming it's always net 30. Your company may have something different. So what that means, 4/19 is not the beginning of this invoice. April 19th is not the effective date. The effective date, well, does this make it into the April batch? Is it before the 26th? Yes. So it makes it into the April batch. What is the last day of April? 30th. So the effective invoice date here is April 30th. 10 days from there would be, well, we don't need the table for this, May 10th. Since it was the last day of the month, it'll be the 10th day of the next month. It'll be the end of the 10-day discount period. So you get 2% discount if paid by May 10th. And it'll end on May 30th. Actually, May has 31 days, so technically, EOM, they usually, I said net 30, usually it's net 1 month is technically what they figure it as. So the end of that, depending on, I haven't looked in this textbook for a while, but depending on the textbook, sometimes they say it's the last day of the next month, so they might list it as May 31st as the end of the credit period. So let's take a peek. Let's do an example here. So the invoice date is October 27th. The amount is $2,400. Terms 210 EOM. Paid on November 9th. Find the amount paid. I'll have you look at that. Try that in your notes quick and we'll look at it. So the big question, do they get the discount? Well, what is the effective invoice date? This is dated October 27th. Does it make it into the October batch? No. It's after the 26th. So it goes into the November batch. And the last day of November is the 30th. It's 2/10, so 10 days into the next month would be December 12th, the December 10th. And then, of course, either December 30th or 31st would be considered the end of the credit period. So paid on, I said 11/9, didn't I? So they were well within the credit period. They could have paid it on 12/9 and still got the discount. All the way up to 12/10, they would have still got the discount. So they do get the 2% discount. So the amount paid is going to be the $2,400 times 2% is going to be 0.98. So $23.52 is the amount paid. How many had $23.52? Good deal. Well, something else that's part of the terms of sale that we haven't talked about yet, or part of the invoice we haven't talked about yet, is shipping. Shipping can be either paid for by the buyer or the seller. Now, there are some terms that tell us which one. One of those terms is FOB, which stands for free on board. FOB specifies, and this is a little confusing, it specifies which person does not pay. FOB shipping point which person is at the shipping point, the buyer or the seller? The seller is shipping it. That means the buyer, it's free to the seller, the buyer pays. Free on board destination. Who's at the destination? The buyer. It's going to end up at the buyer. It's free on board destination means it's free at the buyer, which would mean the seller pays. Now, this terminology is a little bit antiquated. It's still used, but not as common as it used to be. So quite often, the terminology that's just going to be used is the seller prepays. And if it's the seller prepays, the freight, that means that they will be reimbursed by the buyer. Mainly because most shipping companies used to do, COD, cash on delivery, where they would deliver it and then the shipping was paid by the buyer. Most shipping companies won't do that anymore because they've had problems with collecting those bills. They won't even load it up until they've been paid for shipping. So the seller has to prepay the shipping to the shipping company, and then the buyer will reimburse the seller for it. So let's look at an invoice date of May 17th. An invoiced amount, a merchandise amount, invoiced amount of $3,900. Terms, 110 net 30. Notice there's no modifications to the invoice date there. Seller prepays $200 in freight. So again, seller prepays $200 in freight implies that the buyer is going to reimburse. How much if paid on May 25th? How much is paid? Now, did they get the discount? I'm not going to draw out the timeline. Is May 25th in the discount period? Yeah, it's within 10 days of May 17th. So they get a 1% discount. So do we take the 3,900 plus the 200 and then times 0.99? No. There is never a discount on freight. Freight is always full price. So we're going to take that 3,900 times, we get a 1% discount, so 3,900 to get the payment amount is going to be times 0.99. That's going to be 38.61. Then to that, we're going to add the 200 in freight. So it'll be $4,061 is what needs to be paid if paid on the 25th, so that they get the 1% discount. Date, 6/7. The amount, $5,500. This time this includes $300 of prepaid freight. What that means is 5,200 is merchandise, 300 is freight. The 5,500 is a total of merchandise and freight. So the 300 is included in that. Terms, 210 EOM. Paid on July 8th. Find the amount paid. Give you a couple minutes to look at that and think about it. First question needs to answer is July 8th. Do they get the discount? Well, if it was June 6th, that means the effective date is going to be the last day of June, which is June 30th. So July 10th is the end of the discount period. So they do get a 2% discount. So that's part settled. Do we take 5,500 times 0.98? Say no. Why not? Because there's $300 worth of freight included in that 5,500. We have to take out the $300 worth of freight first. So the 5,200 of merchandise is what gets the discount. So that'll be times 0.98, which is going to be what? 5,000 and what's that? 96. Thank you. $5,096 is the amount after the 2% discount. And then we have to add back in the 300 freight. Yes, 5,396. Because you never get a discount on freight. Period. Okay, I'm going to have you try this one in your notes. So our date on the invoice is July 27th. The amount, $4,100, which includes $150 in freight, in prepaid freight. Terms, 310, net 30, ROG. Delivery is confirmed on August 4th. Find the amount paid if paid on August 13th. So find that in your... So what's going to be the beginning of our timeline here? It's ROG, so it's when the goods are delivered. August 4th is the beginning of our timeline. 10 days later would be the 14th. 30 days later would be September 3rd. Do they get the discount? Yes. Paid on August 13th would be right here. They get a 3% discount. They get the 3% discount on what amount? 4,100 minus 150. So it's 3,950 that they get the discount on. So we're going to multiply 3,950 by what? 0.97 because it's 3%. So 3,950 times 0.97. 38,3150. So $3,831.50. Are we done? No. Put the 150 in freight back in there. So $3,981.50 is the amount. What do you think? Not so bad? Okay, well, it's just a touch early, but let's go ahead and take our break here. It is 7:13 about, so let's come back at 7:23, and we'll hit our third hour.